I don't know about you, but I can remember being a kid, sitting at the dinner table and having my mom screech,
"Eat your vegetables!"
When I asked why, she'd say,
"Because they're good for you."
Right. Then I would parry with the always irritating when heard in rapid repetition, "Why?" And then Mom would say, Match point, Alton. Truth is, Mom didn't have an answer, and I knew it. I mean, sure, she might have been able to play the vitamin card, but she knew I would counter with the classic chewable Flintstones maneuver, and she'd be right back where she started, only with a bad case of the rage shakes. These days, kids have a tougher time because research is piling high about the nutritive power of food. Some ingredients, in fact, are so packed with complex chemical goodness that they're now being looked upon as medicines, just like in the old days before there were big pharmaceutical companies. Although the jury is still out on many of the new claims, a few foods have passed through the screen of scrutiny and come out the other side as bona fide superfoods, which, now that we know what they can actually do in our bodies, we'd be silly not to consume in mass quantities. The problem is many of these foods aren't really everyday fare. Consider, well, the cranberry. Although consumption of cranberry cocktail and dried cranberries is up, most of us down a dose of fresh berries once, maybe twice a year, usually just after a mouthful of turkey and right before a football game. And, well, that's a shame, because although I'm not 100% sure that these are the miracle cure-all of the century, I'm 100% sure that they're... There is no written reference to tell us whether or not cranberries were actually served during that mythic first Thanksgiving, the three-day feast held between the settlers and the natives in 1621. But we do know that the local natives had been eating cranberries out of hand for centuries and grinding them with dried meat and fat to create the power provision known as pemmican, which they consumed during the winter months. Now, not only did the acidic berries act as a preservative for the meat, but the vitamin C helped to prevent scurvy. More on that later. Now, we can also assume that the English settlers recognized these New World cranberries as a larger version of a similar fruit found all over England called thin whortle or marsh whortle. Now, over the next 150 years, wild cranberries worked their way into many of the settlers' dishes, breads, puddings, and meat dishes, in which the acidity of the berries helped to cut the fattiness of New World game. Now, today, cranberries like these here in Massachusetts are harvested two ways, okay? Dry harvested berries means berries that are just picked right off of this pesky little vine. Now, these are packaged and sold either as, fresh or frozen. As for the mass majority of the modern cranberry crop, they, of course, go into either cranberry sauce or cranberry juice. And for that number of cranberries, this vine poses quite a problem. The solution to the harvesting problem is inside the cranberry itself in the form of a beautiful little air bubble. Okay, they float. So all you have to do is flood the bog. The berries float up away from the vines, and you can just kind of come in and scoop them up. See, they float like corks. Of course, this is a kind of slow process. Takes a great deal of labor, but luckily we have a mechanized solution for that. This odd-looking contraption is a beater. As it's driven through the bog, it does just that. It beats the cranberries off the vines while doing minimum harm to the berries themselves. Now, after the beater's work is done, the bog is flooded to a depth of a couple of feet, maybe 3. And once the berries have had adequate time to work their way up to the surface, harvesting crews work to herd the crimson beauties with a big floating corral called a boom. Then a large hose is placed under the water, and the berries are sucked up, separated from the water and various sticks, weeds, stones, and occasional frogs, and spit into the back of a truck. Once they're delivered to the plant, the truck dumps the berries back into water, which moves them into the processing area. Since wet harvest berries don't keep as long as dry, they're used mostly for canning, juicing, and drying. Since we're going to stick with fresh applications, we'll follow the dry berries, which are dumped from the field bins into a giant vibrating sorter that separates out the sticks and stones and vines and pretty much anything that isn't a berry. A conveyor then whisks what's left into the giant wooden and very old separator. Now let's pause here a moment for a historical interlude. Ever wonder why in some parts of the world cranberries are called bounce berries? Well, according to the legend, it's due to the actions of a 19th century grower named Peg-Leg John. Because his name is John, apparently he lost a leg in the war. He stored his cranberries in the upper loft of his barn. How a one-legged man got him up there in the first place is something of a mystery. Anyway, when it came time to bring them down to market, old PLJ didn't want to bother carrying them down the stairs, so he just poured them. Now, being that they are very taut and firm and contain the aforementioned air bubble, the best berries bounced, whereas malformed, soft, or damaged berries didn't. And so the best of the berries bounced to the bottom of the stairs while the others fell through the backs or just laid there. Unbeknownst to Peg-Leg Johnny had just invented the cranberry separator like the 1923 model still in use by the good folks at Deacon's. From bog to bag, very little happens to cranberries to alter their natural state. They're not even washed, as that would seriously shorten the life of bagged berries. Now, the particular and peculiar structure of Vaccinium macrocarpon grants these little guys considerable shelf life, up to 2 months in the refrigerator or 6 months in the freezer. Just don't wash them first. I gotta quit eating these things. Now, when I was a kid in the 60s, we never saw fresh or even frozen cranberries. We had cranberry cocktail, called such not because it's got hooch in it, but because it contains only 25 to 30% actual cranberry juice. Any more than that, most people find it too bitter. And of course, we had cranberry sauce. Now, ever since World War II, a majority of the cranberry crop in this country has gone into quivering columns, such as the one in this can. Now, it's a great concept for 2 reasons. One, cranberries are kind of tough to take on their own, and the sauce approach helps allied flavors come into play. 2, although several fruits possess the mysterious ability to form jellies without the addition of gelatin or pectin, no fruit is better at it than cranberries. And best of all, this power can be easily harvested at home. Our cranberry sauce begins with 1 pound of fresh cranberries, rinsed thoroughly and rid of any underripe or damaged goods. Now, while those drain, we will construct the syrup in which the cranberries must cook. Small saucepan, and into that goes 1/4 cup of freshly squeezed orange juice, 1/4 cup of 100% cranberry juice. This isn't cranberry juice cocktail. That won't do, but don't worry, you can find this in most megamarts and certainly at health food stores. Last, but by no means least, 1 cup of honey, and I'm using clover honey here, I believe. I'm going to bring this to a boil over medium-high heat and then reduce to a simmer for 5 minutes to concentrate the flavors. Now, please note that everything that's gone in here so far is either a sugar or an acid or both. Why? Patience, grasshopper. Now, enter the cranberries. Cook, stirring often until the berries burst. Remember, there's air inside. When that air expands, there's going to be a bit of a pop. But don't worry, if your pan's big enough, you won't take a hit. But, you know, be careful anyway. Now, in 15 minutes, this mixture will start to thicken up a bit. And you don't want to let it cook more than 15 minutes because you might damage the pectins inside those berries. And believe me, we need those pectins. What are pectins? Well, come here. Like other connecting tissues, say gelatin or starch, pectins are long-chain carbohydrates. Their primary function is to help hold fruit cell walls together while the fruit itself ripens. And that way, well, it's a lot like this rebar, which prevents this otherwise brittle concrete from crumbling. The big difference is that in most fruit, these pectins dissolve during the final stages of ripening. But in cranberries, these soluble fibers hang around, which is a good thing if you like cranberry sauce, because we can essentially pull these things out and rearrange them to our liking with a little help from science, of course. I guess I should put that back. Now, let's kill the heat. At this point, the pectins are fully active and ready to bind. The problem is, they're a little on the negative side. They don't want to bind with each other, which is why we add an acid, orange juice. That helps to reduce the overall negativity. The problem is then, well, the pectins don't want to bind with each other. They want to bind with water. So we add something even more hygroscopic or water-loving, which is sugar. The sugar takes over the water, leaving the pectins to bind with each other. That is why you almost always see sugar and an acid like lemon juice in jelly recipes. Without the right amount of each, there's no way for the natural pectins to set. Unless, of course, you're using a low sugar pectin, calcium molecules, and oh, never mind. Let's find a mold. Let's see here. No. Hey, if people are crazy about a 15-ounce can of cranberry sauce, how do you think they'll feel about a 30-ounce can? Ha ha! Once your uber mold is constructed, use a canning funnel to help with the loading. Of course, if you don't have a canning funnel, you could use, well, anything else that's kind of that shape. There. Stash this in the old chill chest for about, well, 6 hours. We'll set it, but overnight we'll set it even better. Your patients will be, you know. Although you may want a narrow glass around to help extrude the goodness, odds are good that if you leave this at room temperature for a few minutes, you'll be able to simply deep can like that. Nice gel, huh? Now, I'm something of a purist and prefer to keep my cranberry sauce on the simple side, but you can feel free to spice things up at will. You could add nutmeg to the mix, or cloves, ginger. If something tropical suits, you could stir in some finely minced chilies, or some chopped vanilla bean, or I don't know, cardamom. Heck, if you make your own sauce, the sky is the limit. Just don't tinker around in the engine room. The amount of fruit, water, acid, sweetness, and time need to remain a constant. Historically, cranberries have been used to cure a host of physical ills. When the Mayflower landed, local Native Americans were using cranberry poultices to cure blood poisoning. The cranberry's wild European cousins have also been used to treat various stomach ailments, particularly diarrhea. Turns out the soluble fiber, the pectins, are a big help with you know what I mean. In fact, the pec from pectin appears in the name of a popular medicine meant to treat cranberries also contain vitamin C, so ships sailing out of New English ports often carried barrels of them to guard against scurvy. But the most famous Cran cure concerns the dread UTI, or urinary tract infection. When I was a kid, I can remember my doctor saying,
I'm going to write you a prescription for cranberry juice, and I want you to drink that 3 times daily, and that little problem of yours should clear right up.
how's that?
Oh, it's complicated.
Try me.
Well, it has to do with hippuric and quinic acids, and they just burn up the bacteria.
Huh, okay. Thanks. Wrong. Now we know that oh, come on, let's get small. An impressive pile of research has shown that phytochemicals in cranberries called proanthocyanidins, or PACs for short, can prevent bacterial infections in various parts of the body, especially the mouth, stomach, and urinary tract, where bacteria can adhere to healthy tissue and colonize, making you sick. As you can see, here's one of the nasty little boogers now. Of course, antibiotics seek to kill, but often just make bacteria mad and give them an opportunity to develop resistancy. PACs, or packs, on the other hand, stick to the bonding structures on the bacteria, preventing them from sticking to your insides. If they can't stick, they can't make you sick. Of course, this is a preventative measure, but if you ask me, it is one worth taking. As for this guy, well, you'll just have to hope that this passes on down the line. Gonna hurt, though. If you could draw a map of the taste buds of the American tongue, this is how it would look, at least when it comes to dessert. Sweet, 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 sweet. We don't go for tart, we don't go for sour, we don't go for bitter or salty, just sweet. But that is not going to stop me from enjoying a delightful and delightfully tart cranberry dessert. I'll make a deal with you. We will decrease the bitterness to an acceptable level, but not by overdosing on sugar. Instead, we will use cold. Here we have the very same saucepan we used for our cranberry sauce, only this time we will load it up with 5½ ounces of cranberries, that's about 1½ cups, 2 cups of water, 3/4 cups of sugar, and ½ teaspoon of freshly grated lime zest. Actually, we'll hold off on that one for a while. Now, put that to medium-high heat, bring it to a simmer, then reduce the heat and cook until the berries pop. Of course, the pigments in cranberries, anthocyanins, are very effective dyes, so dress accordingly. Right, it's been 7 minutes. These berries should be soft enough to apply the stick. Yes, you could use a bar blender for this, but I think it would over pulverize the berries. I only want them mostly pulverized. This is hot, so be careful. There. Pulverized, but still ever so lightly chunky. Perfect. Now we strain. Our target, a 9x13 baking dish. We have a fine metal strainer, and this may take a couple of minutes. I know you were going to want to take a spoon or something and push all that mush through there, but you don't want to do that because we don't want any of that solid stuff. Don't worry, your patience will be rewarded. There we go. Last step, the zest. Right in the middle. Stir that in to evenly distribute. There we go. This now moves directly to your friendly neighborhood chill chest. No, I don't mean the one upstairs here. I mean the deep chill down below. You're gonna need a nice level spot. So, here we go. Just lay it out thusly. Now, I know what you were thinking. You thought that I was gonna chill this and then churn it into a sorbet. No, I've got other plans. Let this freeze rock hard, do you hear? By the 17th century, the Italians and the Chinese were mixing saltpeter and snow together to create slushes so cold that they could freeze just about anything, even mixtures containing a fair amount of sugar. Now, since ice cream churns were still a couple centuries away, the resulting ices were rock hard and had to be scraped into grains or granitas. Now, like kosher salt, these large flakes melt slowly on the tongue, allowing for the enjoyment of a complex range of flavors. Whatever's left over can simply be covered, refrozen, and scraped another day. You think what I'm thinking? Due to its challenging but not too sweet flavor and crimson hue, cranberries have long been popular with mixologists. Hundreds of classic bar applications call for our hero's presence, but for most of the 20th century, it was only bottle juice full of sugar that barkeeps reached for. I'm happy to say that now the whole berry is making its way back to the bar, due in part to the popularity of drinks such as the Cosmopolitan, an unabashedly girly drink descendant of the martini, which many say was created in Miami, Florida. Of course, I would never personally drink a Cosmopolitan in a million years. unless you put it in front of me. I can't help it. When it's made right, it's, well, good. And since it's loaded with cranberries, it's just gotta be good for you, right? And if you've made the granita, you're already halfway happy. Let's mix. Simply scrape up or break off 2.5 ounces worth of the granita, place in a cocktail shaker, along with 1 ounce of good quality vodka and ½ ounce of freshly squeezed lime juice. Lid up and shake. Ideally, you keep shaking until you can hear that the granita is completely melted. Now, we serve. Now, what makes this version of the drink superior to those built on a cranberry cocktail? Well, for one thing, the flavor is superior thanks to the tart astringency of the actual berry. And of course, although we did strain the granita mixture before we froze it, it still contains a good bit of the pectins out of the berry, which, well, they don't actually thicken the drink, but they do add a satisfying weight on the tongue. And of course, you do serve this with a cranberry instead of an olive. Well, I hope that we've inspired you to take up some slack in your American culinary heritage by getting fresh with the cranberry. If you don't do it for the flavor or for the many culinary possibilities, then do it perhaps for your health. Which one of you doctors ordered a Cosmo?
We're here.
See you next time on Good Eats. Here.